to the Global Networking Forum about the status of citizen science in global Earth observation systems. I'm your moderator, Jessica Culler. This event kicks off a 3-year collaboration between the Workforce Development Young Professionals Program Committee and the Subcommittee for Global Earth Observation Systems of Systems, or GEOS. So this first year, we'll have the Global Networking Forum. The following year, we will be having a technical session, which will be session B1.6, and that is going to be on the same topic of crowdsourcing citizen science and global Earth observations. And that, in addition to being the standard technical session, is going to be a global technical session, which used to be called our virtual forums, where not only will we have the standard technical presentations that we have in the room that you're seeing across the conference this week, but we'll also be having opportunities for remote presenting and remote audience participation. So if this is a topic that you have experience in, or you have colleagues that might be interested in this, please consider submitting an abstract to this session. Even if you can't join us in Bremen, you would still be able to participate and observe this session that we have. And then the third year, we'll be submitting a plenary proposal so that we can share the concept of the citizen science and global Earth observations with the wider IAC audience. So that's our 3-year plan here. The first event here, we're kicking this off with kind of an introduction to the spectrum from crowdsourcing to citizen science. That can be something as easy as downloading an app that passively takes data, which at the end of the session we'll actually be asking you to do for one of our committee members' projects, all the way up to actually collaboratively designing scientific investigations with non-scientists. So we have our wonderful panel here today that will be going through some of the context of citizen science and where it is today, because we've progressed past the point where citizen science is something kind of experimental out there. Some people are piloting things, to the point where it's actually something that we rigorously understand, have best practices. There's ways that we're doing this that isn't just, kind of an outreach side thing anymore. We're actually kind of taking it a step further, which is really exciting, and our panelists will be talking about. So they'll each be giving a bit of an overview about some of the projects that they've worked on, and then after their brief presentations, we'll be having a discussion with hopefully questions from you all, and with some questions that I have, so that you can hear them kind of discuss and take that conversation a little bit further than just the overviews. So if you have questions, we have volunteers in blue shirts here and up here that have paper. So if you'll write and submit a written question to us, they'll collect it and they'll get it to someone who'll get me the questions on stage so I can incorporate it into the discussion, versus saving all the questions for the end and not being able to get to many of them. So please do that throughout the session. Anytime you're ready, wave down those volunteers and they'll get those questions. So without further delay, let me introduce our first panelist, Isabel Kingsley. After being a high school science teacher for 4 years, Isabel has worked in the field of science education and outreach at various cultural institutions in Canada and Australia. She's produced and managed multiple science education initiatives, including the National Science and Technology Week in Canada, the Museum to Use Citizen Science Education Program, and the Mars Lab, a world-class STEM education program located at the Powerhouse Museum in Sydney. Most recently, she was a director and founding partner of the Sydney Science Festival. She's currently completing a PhD at the University of New South Wales in the Faculty of Science. Her research aims to understand and rigorously measure the effectiveness of science education and outreach, including citizen science, in achieving its objectives of improving people's understanding, attitudes, and perceptions of science. Isabel?
Thanks, Jessica. So I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview of some of the citizen science projects that are happening here in Australia, but also talk about project success. So we have, sorry about that. Here we go. So we have a few citizen science projects, well, quite a few here in Australia. One of which is the Fireballs in the Sky citizen science project, and it's super, super popular. You can see here that it's been downloaded by over 30,000 times, and basically what it does is people can download the app and report a fireball sighting, and over 3,000 sightings have been reported already. Another one that is Earth science related is the Weather Detective Citizen Science. And basically what it does is it's asked people it uses quite a unique data set. So it gets people to transcribe weather observations from 100-year-old logbooks of ships that have sailed around Australia in the early 1900s, and then entering that into a global weather database for researchers to model future weather. And over 500,000 logged observations have been transcribed by over 11,000 citizen scientists. The next one that I just want to touch quickly on, it's more related to space science, but is such a beautiful story, has a great outcome, is Stargazing Live, the BBC show that is done by Brian Cox, came to Australia in April. And it was a 3-night television event, and it encouraged people to go hunt for exoplanets and trawl through hundreds of thousands of images of stars that are captured by the Kepler Space Telescope. And those are on the Zooniverse website. Some of you might have heard of Zooniverse before. And they made a discovery. They found 4 previously unknown planets circling a star in the Aquarius constellation. And one of the citizen scientists was a mechanic from Darwin, and he was pretty chuffed to find out that his name was going to be on a scientific paper. So high numbers of participants and volumes of data and amazing discoveries. I'd say these are pretty successful citizen science projects because they are achieving their goal. So different projects have different purposes, and obviously measuring success depends on what their objectives are. So I just want to take a look at some of the language that we use in describing citizen science. So some people describe it as crowdsourcing, which is basically getting more hands on deck to do more science, to go through, to either collect data or go through data. And then other people describe citizen science as more of a non-scientists working with scientists in a collaborative nature, embedding non-scientists in the scientific process, often with scientific literacy as an outcome. So which one is it? Well, it's both. So citizen science projects, can be categorized into 3 different categories. There's contributory, which is just citizen science contribute data to a project. Then there's collaborative, where people get to, they may be involved in some other aspects, such as the design or data analysis or dissemination of findings. And then the co-created type of project, where scientists and citizen scientists really work together on most or all aspects of the scientific process. And you can see here where crowdsourcing and cooperative research lie on that spectrum there. So which one is best? Well, it depends on your objectives. If your main objective is to get more people to help you do more science, then crowdsourcing is a perfect way to do that. If you're trying to increase scientific literacy, well then cooperative research or co-created research is the kind of design that you want to do. And interestingly, there's been some research that showed that crowdsourcing, actually there's no change, or there's sometimes been a decrease in scientific literacy. Whereas in co-creative programs, there's been either no change, but also sometimes an increase in scientific literacy. So that's really important when you're thinking about maybe coming up with ideas for Earth observation projects, is you really want to make sure that you think about what your main objective is and design a fit-for-purpose project, because the objectives will determine the outcomes. What you hope to achieve will determine what you do and what you get out of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Isabel. As a reminder for our audience, please don't forget that we're taking questions on paper throughout the forum to answer in a discussion after our panelists do their presentations. So again, if you wave your hand, we have these volunteers in blue t-shirts that can get you a paper and then bring them up to us here so we can incorporate that. So next up, we have Mr. Jim Graff. He is the Deputy Director for the Earth Science and Technology Directorate at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He provides management oversight for the development of numerous ongoing missions, including 4 with international collaboration, and the operation of 11 spacecraft and instruments presently in orbit. He was project manager for 2 of NASA's spaceborne missions, the Earth Orbiter QuickSat and the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. He authored numerous publications and has a patent. He's an IAA Fellow, an AIAA Associate Fellow, and has received 2 NASA Outstanding Leadership Awards. Jim?
Thank you. I think Isabel set the tone. You have crowdsourcing, you have citizen science. The definitions are very clear. There's a difference there, and I appreciate you defining that. I thought I might take a moment out, if I could, and just get to talk about a little bit of the history. We talk about crowdsourcing and citizen science like it's something new. In reality, it's been around for a very long time. If you go back to the 1700s in Amsterdam, there were citizens going out using tide gauges to measure the sea surface height. And so it's been here for a long time. Since the turn of the century, there have been people in the United States with weather stations in their backyard that have been providing data. So in a sense, it's not new. What has really been significant is the onset of broadband communications and high-speed computing that allows us to communicate what we're learning quickly and thoroughly to scientists and to participate with them in the actual science process. That's what's different, and that's what's igniting this whole this whole area of crowdsourcing and citizen science. Relative to space, the earliest that I could come across in terms of citizen science was the LDEF facility. This is a long-duration exposure facility that was actually launched off the shuttle back in 1984. And it was put up in space for several years and then brought back down by the shuttle, and it had all sorts of experiments around it. One of the experiments were tomato seeds. They wanted to see what the impact was of being in space, being exposed to the space environment, and how it would affect tomatoes. And then they distributed those tomato seeds out to laboratories, but also to classrooms around the world, and say, you know, how do you see the change in the ability to reproduce, which in itself is the first step forward, you might say, in space of citizen science. So NASA has several objectives for citizen science, and that is collecting data and reporting the observations. And this is essentially the crowdsourcing that Isabel was talking about. But then you can move to the spectrum that she showed, move over to the right, and you start getting into analyzing the data, developing the applications. And these are not just applications on your iPhone. These are applications for societal benefits, and how can you use that data. And lastly, it's create technology and generating ideas. It's a list here, but if you think about it, there's probably a tremendous amount of effort that goes into the first one, the highest, and less as you move down the row. What we'd like to do is be able to get full involvement in all of these activities across the board, not just in boots on the ground producing the data for the scientists. So that's one of the objectives that we all have, and NASA is trying to do that through one means through the NASA Space App Challenge, which is a hackathon that they put on once a year. It lasts for 48 hours. And they've had last year, over 25,000 participants in 69 countries. And they have different challenges and different themes. Earth is one of the themes. And I thought what I would do is just grab one of the winners from 16, Scintilla team, and they won for the best use of data. Remember, the objective here for NASA is to is to try to see if they can find a way of using the NASA data or other spaceborne data that's out there in a constructive and positive manner. So the team went off and it looked at air quality. And I'm going to just hit the next button, and hopefully the video comes up and you'll see what they produced.
Poor air quality is a leading factor in the development of serious respiratory and cardiovascular health conditions throughout the world. The risk to public health is highest in developing nations who lack access to current local air quality information.
With Scintilla, we set out to address this need by comparing data from NASA, the EPA, and our own ground-based air quality monitoring stations to predict current air quality anywhere in the world. Our web portal makes local air quality scores and pollution concentrations easily available to those who need it most.
Finally, we pull real-time sentiments from Twitter and use machine learning to better understand the relationship between air quality and public health. Scintilla, democratizing air quality data.
So here's one group that got together and they had an objective, and they put together a very nice program, and I can't tell you whether they're moving forward with it or not, but it was fairly impressive what they can do in 48 hours. There are other agencies that are interested in citizen science. One is the Usgs, and they have adopted a Pixel program. And in that program, they're asking help from essentially all of us to be boots on the ground and to go out, take a particular pixel, and take pictures of that pixel, and take each one of the cardinal points, north, south, east, and west, and up and down, and provide that back to them. And that is being used to enhance the ground truth for the Landsat program. Landsat's been in motion for 40 years now, and it's getting a big boost in terms of ground truth and watching the change that happens by citizen scientists out there helping to document it. Last, I think that I'll talk about is not only are the agencies trying to promote citizen science, but programs are and projects are. And one, the Orbiting Carbon Observatory has created what we call IC Change. And it's a way of that citizens out there can observe change of what's happening out there and record it in an almanac that is focused in, is captured, and they can talk about, what has changed relative to fire, what has happened in climate or weather, and document it. And scientists and journalists go in and can pull it out and look for trends and things that are happening. So I think what you're seeing in the last two is more boots on the ground, people documenting what's happening, which previously we've never been able to afford or be able to have the data from. But I think that we are in the era when we can take advantage of that. And previously, it's being able to analyze that data and move up. So I guess I'm going to stop there and just say I think that what we have is a long history of citizen science in the world. I think that today's capability in broadband communication is allowing us to take it to a new step that nobody ever thought before. And involving citizen science has really been a real boon for all of the science, earth science community that's out there. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jim. And as a reminder, we've got the papers and have some questions coming in, so please get those to our volunteers in the blue T-shirts, and they have the papers to give out, and we'll incorporate those into the discussion in a moment. But next, we have our final panelist, Dr. Danielle Wood. She's a space systems and engineer and researcher with expertise in technology policy for the US and emerging nations. Next January, she'll be starting a faculty position at the Media Lab in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where she'll lead a research team that improves the design of complex systems using technology enabled by space. She previously served as the Goddard Applied Sciences Manager at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, where she fostered the transfer of Earth science findings for societal applications such as food security and water resource management. Earlier, she served as a special assistant to the Deputy Administrator at NASA headquarters, and before working at NASA, she held positions at the Aerospace Corporation, Johns Hopkins University, and the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs. She studied at MIT, where she earned a PhD in systems engineering, master's in aerospace engineering, and in technology policy. Danielle?
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be with all of you today. Thank you for being here. and I really want to build on the contributions of my co-panelists and just share a few thoughts, especially showing that not only do we have great success in implementing a number of individual projects in citizen science, we are seeing institutional commitments to enabling citizen science as a long-term ingredient in our earth science activities across both government and nonprofit and academic organizations. As Jessica mentioned, I'll be transitioning soon to MIT starting in January, but I want to share some insights I've gleaned in my previous work within NASA, Johns Hopkins, and interaction with the United Nations. So I'll give a few examples from that. On the NASA side, in addition to what Jim shared, what's exciting is that we're seeing citizen science being included in a broader dialogue about the role of innovation and fresh ways to encourage innovation within the broader government and private sector ecosystem. I want to point you to the website nasa.gov/solve. It's a place not just for citizen science, but for a number of different opportunities in crowdsourcing. And by kind of linking the citizen science opportunities for earth science within this broader ecosystem, we hope to give even greater exposure to those who are interested in partnering with government space agencies to help address important challenges. This particular site shows you the targeted examples within the Solve environment, especially for earth science. And so it's one great place you can go to see a number of the examples, including the one Jim just mentioned with IC Change. And what's exciting is there's now institutional commitment to continue to enable these kinds of information and programs and to be elevated to be increasing the awareness and continuing, as Isabel's working on, to measure the benefits of these. We'll look in particular at the GLOBE example. As Jim mentioned, in a way, we really are building on decades of experience. And NASA has used GLOBE as its really premier example of citizen science and international collaboration for a number of decades. And GLOBE is like one case where it started off focusing on the role of children in classrooms around the world, and it's now expanded to continue to include those children, but also it's an invitation to all of you as well. So within GLOBE, we see already the benefits of working across a number of countries that have signed formal agreements with NASA. And each country that joins as a partner has the opportunity to establish within their country which schools will participate as GLOBE schools. They find students and teachers who are interested in joining this international movement of collecting data and uploading it to a site where all the member schools can see it and share it. In addition, some of the GLOBE participants partner directly with missions, and several of NASA's missions that are usually international collaborations as well, such as the Global Precipitation Mission, which is in collaboration with JAXA. They have direct GLOBE campaigns where they give instructions and direction for these students around the world to collect particular types of data that help them with their mission work and increase the ground validation. It became so interesting to have students do it, but then students would finish from their school and want to still be involved with GLOBE. And that has led to a desire to have a broader opportunity through a mobile app. So you have the chance now to go to the iTunes store or to Google and download the GLOBE Observer app. And that's available for all of us to join this GLOBE family. And two of the particular examples that are available now of activities on GLOBE Observer, one focuses on mosquito mapping, and this one looks at actually having people go out and find areas where mosquito are breeding. If you want to buy a low-cost kit, you can actually collect examples and analyze the larvae, and the goal is then mapping the habitat of mosquitoes. A second example is clouds, and it's a case where you can use simple images but upload that. And so these are in the category of the contributing of data that we mentioned earlier. But if it kind of gives the participant the option to have a lower or higher level of involvement. I'll just mention that with these well-established institutionalized examples, NASA also made a commitment to funding new ideas for citizen science through another program, and it was coming out of the Earth Science Division within NASA, and is the Citizen Science for Earth Systems program. This was exciting because it was the first time a dedicated research solicitation came out that encouraged people to propose citizen science-oriented work, not just as a side piece or an outreach piece, but as the primary goal of a research activity. So we are now seeing some researchers already in that area. About 16 proposals were funded. And as we go forward, we'll see a couple examples of their work in the next few years. One example is a case where a team is actually sourcing data from Twitter to be able to verify where rain is happening and the types of rain. And they're comparing that also with data from both the Global Precipitation Measurement Mission as well as the other collaborative missions that together measure rain around the world. And it's great because they can think about having both participatory, or they have citizen scientists who are involved by choice, as well as those who are just putting information in the public domain. So they can take publicly available Twitter data, or they can invite people to volunteer as citizen scientists, and they can have those two kinds of involvement over time. I want to also just go beyond the NASA example to bring an example from ESA. Here's a case where ESA is inviting students and others to get involved with understanding the process for growing plants in space. It allows them to engage with a hands-on activity of plant growing, as well as understanding and comparing with information that we see from plant experiments in space. So this is a nice case where it goes beyond just simple data collection to a full experiment experience for the participants. Now, if we expand beyond pure science and think about social applications, I also want to mention nonprofit groups that engage citizens for data collection and for mapping. And one example is the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. And his example is interesting. It's not for immediate theoretical science, but it's really for responding during disasters. But I think it's worth mentioning as well because it's a case where volunteers have the opportunity to get some training and then take immediate action that makes a large difference during disasters by helping to build databases and maps showing where there's damage after disasters. And it's definitely related to Earth observation and can later be used, I think, also by scientists. And the OpenStreetMap team makes an effort, especially after events, to think about how they can confirm the quality of their data and work with organizations that actually do their disaster response to ensure there's a good mapping between the information they're providing and the use for disaster response. One more example I want to show is the role of nonprofits that really become very specialized in a particular area, and they can be an excellent bridge between government organizations that produce the infrastructure and the foundational data within earth science and those who really want to specialize in a particular area. I want to reference the work of Joan Maloof, an amazing retired professor who has been an expert on forestry. She has a particular passion for mapping and preserving old growth forests. Especially in the United States, we have gone through centuries of logging and have really destroyed many of our early forests. And so part of the questions Joan is trying to ask is where are there still old growth forests and how can we preserve them? She has a long-term goal of identifying and preserving at least a little bit of forest in every county in the US, which is a really inspiring activity. But she engages very highly skilled volunteers. Some, like her, are scientists, but many are just people who care about conservation. But her team is able to help them achieve a high level of skill so that their contributions in science are really at a very consistent and high quality. You see something similar with those who do bird watching at the Audubon Society. Their volunteers are committing hours and hours to bring their skills to a very high level. And then those teams and those organizations are great partners with government organizations who even give input into the kinds of science and data collection on the government side that would help them reach their goals. So I'd love to see these specialized groups that really understand a particular area, such as in conservation, very well, and they can bring high value add in bringing citizen science along with government organizations. I'll stop there, and then we can look forward to discussion.
Excellent, thank you very much. And one more reminder, paper questions, taking them to incorporate into our discussion that'll start now. We'll start with this one from Andrea. She is saying that the concept of citizen science is not yet generally known by the general public, who are actually the main target of it. In Spain, she's never heard of this exciting idea. So how can we improve spreading the word to an international community? And then she also has a follow-up question. Do your organizations have some partnerships or relations that could help going beyond the US area to expand to the citizen science concept to other languages and regions? So have at it. Whoever.
Take it.
Thanks so much for the question. Now, on one hand, I have one idea that it's okay if people don't know the phrase citizen science, as long as they know of the opportunities to do citizen science. So, of course, we want to continue to spread the word on the terminology itself, but we hope most importantly that people find the apps and get involved. I mean, I'd say from the GLOBE program, we do see that there's really a lot of involvement. Hundreds of countries are involved, and we already have, for example, NASA through GLOBE brings together teachers from many countries every year for activities, for training, for sharing. So there's great evidence that it is happening around the world. However, it doesn't mean we're done. It means there's still continued work to do. And so I think as we take advantage of opportunities such as putting apps in a place where people can find it when they're not even looking for citizen science, it's a great opportunity. Certainly, I believe that partnering with these organizations such as the one I mentioned, which is the Old Growth Forest Network, is a good opportunity because they have a story to tell that's not really about the phrase citizen science. It's about an issue people can get behind, which may include conservation or understanding air quality. So I would rather people contribute to those issues and engage in citizen science along the way, personally.
I think also a lot of organizations who put on citizen science projects have marketing departments that can help with putting the word out. But here in Australia, every year for the last 15 years, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, the ABC, has come up with a citizen science project. So they partner with organizations, universities, and they put on a new citizen science project out every year during National Science Week in August. So there's a lot of hype about National Science Week, a lot of promotion and publicity, and through that, then a lot of people know about the citizen science projects and the opportunities for them to be able to engage and contribute. So that's a really great way, and obviously through social media, that also really helps getting that word out to all the citizens who might be able to participate. And lastly, things like Stargazing Live, like the example I gave, where you have a major television event by, a super well-known scientist like Professor Brian Cox, encouraging people to go out and participate in a citizen science project. That also really helps, get the word out to people.
Just as a reminder, Jim reminded me that we could just say again, the website I showed earlier, which is nasa.gov/SOLVE, nasa.gov/solve, it really has opportunities that are open to anyone in the world, and it has a nice collection that's updated regularly of activities, including the Space Apps Challenge, which we expect to continue to focus on Earth activities. We are so thankful that the Space App Challenge happens because individual groups around the world choose to host hackathons. They volunteer to be part of this network, and they host locally in a school or a home, wherever they want. And they are the ones who go to their local neighbors and schools and invite people to come together and form teams. And NASA then kind of puts forth the timeline, the problems, and makes the community come together. So we love these opportunities where people around the world are empowered to create communities locally.
Yeah, I would recommend trying to investigate the Space App Challenge and see if you can get some friends and go to a hackathon and have a great time and learn a lot.
Yeah, sounds like a great space generation, regional and country activity if people are involved with that to do that and be a part of a NASA project just like that. That's pretty exciting, and I think that's one of the cool kind of energy things that comes out of this is that you get to be a part of something way bigger than the moments or even the hours and days that you invest into doing these kind of projects. So cool, thank you. Along those lines, we have a question from Andrew Kuhl saying that citizen science carries an inference of undereducated or unqualified people. How many citizen scientists do you think probably hold tertiary qualifications in some other non-related field?
I think that most outreach that we do, we're preaching to the choir. People who are already interested in science and want to learn more. They're they're often people who have tertiary level education, and some, especially in science, and have that knowledge base and have that interest. So I think that, yes, you're correct. Probably a lot of citizen scientists already have that scientific background to help contribute, and they just want to help contribute to the science, to science, I guess.
I jump in and just say that I think what we have in the idea or the concept of citizen science is to take somebody that maybe is not scientifically oriented and bring them into the fold and allow them to participate, and then they can follow they provide the data and they can follow the analysis and be a part of something that previously they were not able to be there. And I think that is a tremendous step forward for all of us. I mean, people can actually participate now in the science process, and they can get as involved as they want to get involved. And I think that's great, whether they have the full education or not.
Yeah, so, you know, as we've been talking, this concept goes back a very long time, but the talking about it as kind of a concentrated thing that we can do things with citizen science, we can crowdsource, has kind of been more enabled since we've had digital technology, basically. So since we've, you know, had social media and had web and had digital interactions and mobile apps and everything like that, the field has progressed, right? The opportunities that we have. So for all of you, how have you seen kind of this concept and this field of citizen science develop and progress over about the last decade or so?
Take that. I want to start.
I think, yeah, I mean, people have been experimenting with it for quite a few years now, and I think that it's evolved because people have taken chances, tried different things, and learned from different projects and from their mistakes and from other people's mistakes. And the really great thing is that now there's so many great citizen science projects out there, and people involved in them, meaning, you know, the people who are organizing these things, that there's a wealth of knowledge out there that we can use if we're interested in starting a citizen science project. So we can go out and talk to people. I know Renee was in the room earlier. She's one of the key people behind Fireballs in the Sky, for example, which is hugely popular and award-winning citizen science project here. People like that have learned so much by just trying different things over the years. And, you know, someone like Renee has a wealth of information to share with everyone who might, you know, be trying to get something started. So yeah, just learning from our mistakes, that's been the beauty of just trying things out.
Thanks for sharing that, and I want to build on what you're saying, because I think there's been a nice parallel growth in several dimensions that have allowed us to reach the point we are now. It means we've seen a growth in the culture to accept citizen science as a very valid, useful activity, a growth in the technology that, like Jen's been talking about, and the ability to harness both digital, mobile technology, as well as high-performance computing, and a growth in the communities, the sense that there's now places you can go to get together with people of like mind to share the lessons that you're talking about. I think having all those happen at the same time has really brought us to a great point. So now if someone wants to quickly learn about several examples of citizen science and then draw from that and kind of see where they are on your nice timeline or in your nice continuum and kind of design something, like you say, that fits the purpose, it's much more feasible now. They don't have to start from scratch. And of course, they should be able to draw on existing, kind of off-the-shelf or already existing technologies. It's great to see that we can go from everything from individual people doing hands-on work to digital kind of collecting big data examples, and those can be combined so easily now. And so it's really quite exciting what can be done next.
My answer would be it's exponential in terms of the growth of the last decade. It's just phenomenal. And more people are involved, and more people can get involved in the process, so it's great.
Can I just add, so some of you might have heard of Zooniverse, and the guy who started it, Lintott, he actually uses machine learning in his in his citizen science project to not only, I mean, people contribute data or, analyze images, but he collects a lot of information about his citizen scientists using machine learning codes that other people have developed, and that kind of, they're like, hey, use my code. But he's able to know if a certain citizen scientist is, really good at attention to detail, or really good at detecting this kind of information, or contributing this kind of information, or has this kind of skill. And then he uses that to weight citizen scientists and kind of categorize them into different types. And then he assigns specific tasks to different citizen scientists based on their abilities and skills. So I think that, like we said, it's growing exponentially, and now we're applying machine learning to get to know citizen scientists, to kind of, I guess, personalize the experience for them, but also get really great, valuable, and more reliable data.
I might say that it's grown exponentially, and we have to address both sides of the program. And there's the public side and the private side in the growth. When a citizen scientist is out there and providing data, I think the expectation is that data is going to add to science and is going to be available publicly. Certainly if it's a government that's soliciting the information, it will be public, and it'll be out there, and it will help inform the different models and the results from those models. If it's private, then the question, you have an ethics issue. Does the person that's actually providing the information realize that this company or this entity may be sharing that data publicly, or maybe saving it privately? And this represents something we really haven't come to grips with, which is if a private company is using, let's say, crowdsourcing to further some objective that they have, I think that's perfectly fine. But do the people that are actually providing the data understand that? And I think that there's a responsibility on the part of the company or whoever is doing the crowdsourcing and leading it to make sure that all the people understand what contributions they're making and how it will be used in the future.
I'm glad you bring up these ethical questions, because, of course, one of the dimensions we should all wrestle with are the societal impacts of this citizen science. On one hand, some examples we gave really impact theoretical science most directly, and so we don't expect there to be kind of immediate change to someone's quality of life. But other examples that we showed could literally affect the life and the life quality of neighbors to these citizen scientists. We can think of activities around the world, such as those who may be helping to map locations where there's been malaria outbreaks. And often it's very helpful to have people on the ground literally going around, perhaps with a satellite-enabled phone, and collecting data that supports public health records in areas where there is a malaria endemic activity, and they want to map where there are outbreaks, where there's been spraying, to make sure that we have the best possible data for our models. And these are cases where the moral weight of the citizen science data collection is quite high, because the information will immediately be used in policymaking and in addressing public health or other public safety issues. And so certainly we want to be ever vigilant to ask, one, does everyone have a good sense of the privacy and the kind of policy behind the data collection and sharing? And two, are we confident that the quality of the data is high enough to support the moral implications? I do think, I see many organizations that do seem to handle this well, and I think part of the discussion can be, what can we learn from those who are doing it, and share that broadly across the organizations.
Excellent, thank you guys. And I think there's so much here that can be learned from the community of people who are designing these projects. And the more that people can get together and discuss things, like hopefully if you come to our technical session next year in Bremen, you'll hear some more of these examples and results and really get in depth with individual examples. But do you guys have some of those other kind of best practice type things of this question from Will Bazzi says, can you expand on the most successful gameplay engines that you've encountered that have been able to offer valuable data to the scientific community? So gamification aspects of projects that you've dealt with. and maybe just along that line, just the incentives and the things that keep people coming back. What are some of the strategies of getting that community involvement?
Yeah, that's a challenge. That's a challenge that everyone has is how do you make it fun and interesting and keep people engaged and wanting to continue. And yes, gamification has, is a huge incentive and has been used by a lot of citizen science projects to make people want to keep doing it. There's actually a really great citizen science project where you build a protein, a 3D structure of a protein, and the way they've done it, it's it just draws you in, and you can lose yourself for hours just trying to put these bits of protein together into a 3D structure. And then you get points, and then you get medals, and it's just like, it feels like you're playing a game, but you're actually really contributing important information and data for the scientific community. So yeah, gamification has a huge part to play.
Thank you for asking about that, because of course we know from psychologists that games are part of what motivates people to get involved. And the live hackathons, such as Space App Challenge, do have that feel, because there is a judging process. There are winners who get selected. The example that Jim showed was one of those who was selected as a high-quality result. And of course, the live engagement with other teams around you gives you a feeling of playing a game and having people around you to motivate you to do your best. We're going to see an example in a moment of another case from NOAA, our U.S. National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. And that's a case that also uses gaming. So we'll see how awards and badges are used to give a sense of motivation in a few minutes.
Excellent. And kind of toward the end, wrapping up here, so we've had some great kind of anecdotes and examples of things. If people are interested in incorporating these kinds of initiatives into their research, can you guys kind of give some shout outs to resources or to papers or to other things that you would suggest people go to for more information? This is a question from Crystal, the best practices and resources available to those interested in developing their own projects.
Well, I might answer first, and then I'll run away because I have to present my interactive presentation just in a few minutes. I think, again, it's just find people who are doing this and doing it well, and then annoy them and ask them lots of questions about what they do, how they do it, what works, what doesn't. I think that's your best resource right there, is the people who are doing it and doing it well. And there are a lot of examples. So just go and have a look at what's out there, and then contact them and ask them heaps of questions. And I'm going to run away. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Isabel.
Thank you, Isabel.
I'll go ahead and ask Crystal, who's in the audience, to raise her hand. Yes. You can talk to her afterward as well. She's from the Secure World Foundation, and they will be hosting an event, a workshop bringing together community interested in the topic of citizen science. It'll be held in Washington, D.C. But you can certainly ask her for how she's thinking about one of these dialogue opportunities. So thank you, Crystal, for being here.
You can see Crystal wave again one more time. Okay.
I'll also recommend that one great resource is the list of 16 citizen science-related earth science projects recently funded by NASA's Science Mission Directorate. And you can find a list of the entire set of 16 with abstracts and the names of the principal investigators. And as Isabel mentioned, if you see a model that you find attractive, you're welcome to contact them directly. And so this is available online on a website if you search for NASA's Citizen Science for Earth Systems Program and look for that solicitation, especially on the website with NASA called Inspires.
And you can go on, if you're interested in a space app, go on the NASA space app and online, and you'll pick up all the information you need to sign up and participate.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And just by the nature of these kinds of projects, the people should be very open to exchanging information and having contact forums and even forums where the participants, they should be pretty open to contact, so that will be great. So do you guys, oh, sorry.
I was just going to ask, many of you may know Lynn Wigbells as well, who's a great volunteer within IAF, and she's a great contact for the GLOBE program. She's around this week. You can talk to her as well.
Yes, excellent. So do you guys have any closing thoughts before we get to our last little bit here that you want to leave the audience with?
Well, I just think that with the capability we have today, the technology we have today, it's unleashing a tremendous positive force in science that we have to figure out how to take full advantage of. I think we're just starting in on it now, and I think we've got a long way to go to figure out how to capitalize on all of the support we can get out there. But what is very uplifting to me is to see all the people that are so excited about participating in the science process. So,
I appreciate all of you being here, and I'll highlight that to me, citizen science happens because of people with an entrepreneurial spirit, meaning they're people who get excited, they have a vision for how they can engage a wide community in something that they love, and they doggedly pursue that vision. And of course, it was a learning process, because it may be that when one first starts a project, perhaps you don't have quite the right match between the target audience and the science you're trying to achieve. That's okay. We all think it's a learning process, and it may be that you need to upgrade or redesign or restart the project. But I do encourage you to be entrepreneurs in this field, learn from those who have come before us, and consider ways that you can create a community around something that you care strongly about, because there probably are many people who are also interested in working on that with you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So our third panelist, Isabel, had to run and get ready for her interactive presentation that's starting momentarily, that is about a new instrument that she's developing to assess scientific literacy. So I encourage you all to go catch her there in the interactive poster area. Well, not at this very moment, but and discuss that with her as well, because it's all kind of connected of adding rigor to this field, not just the outreach aspect that we talked about, but is this working? What are we accomplishing for science literacy? So in addition to the GLOBE app that you could go download right now and do cloud observations, which I believe they did in one of the E1.8 sessions, they went outside and everyone downloaded the app, and they actually did that. We want to highlight another even easier opportunity to be a part of that low involvement data collection aspect of crowdsourcing that Danielle mentioned. It's called CrowdMag, crowd as in crowdsourcing, and mag as in magnetic field. So could you advance a slide for me? Yeah, I can. So we all know we have these mobile devices that we carry around. Some of us have multiple ones we carry around everywhere. They have these incredibly powerful sensors in them that can be used to collect data and get back to different organizations like the United States National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, where they're using the volunteer smartphone data to create and update models of the geomagnetic field to keep pace with Earth's constantly changing magnetic field. Those models are incorporated back into cell phones, actually, and into various other tools and things that people use every day. And so having these individual points of data coming back to them, they're experimenting with seeing how that can help their models grow and progress and be better and even more accurate. So that app is available on the Apple App Store and the Google Play App Store. So please, if you want to start searching and download those right now, that would be excellent. We have a video here that's going to show a little bit more of that, but the NOAA folks were very excited to have us introduce this to you guys all, because if they had data points for each of us as we're here in Adelaide and in our Australia travels for the end of the week, and if we're staying along extra, that is going to give them this really valuable data set to add on and additionally do some real-time mapping of this region. So please, I encourage everybody to download. It's a passive thing. After you download and roll your device around to calibrate the compass, there's nothing else that you have to do. I think it's set up to just automatically go. So we'll learn a little bit more about that.
Hey, I'm Manoj Nair, a geophysicist at NOAA. Are you an outdoor person? Do you walk your dog, run, hike, or ride a bicycle? You can help us map an uncharted world and improve navigation.
Did you know the smartphone you carry with you is a traveling magnetic observatory? When you are out walking or riding a bicycle, your phone sees the world in ways you probably can't imagine. Behind me are the Earth's magnetic field lines, and your smartphone can see them.
Your phone also sees local magnetic noise sources, like bridges, iron pipes, and other metal objects. We want to map these local noise sources. For that, we need your help. Crowdsourcing data collection will improve navigation, and it makes you a citizen scientist. Collecting magnetic data is a slow and local task. Crowdsourcing with CrowdMag is the only way we can cover large regions quickly.
After you install CrowdMag, your phone will record your magnetic field and noise sources everywhere you go and send us the valuable information.
Our immediate plan is to release the world's first geomagnetic field model developed entirely using crowdsourced data from phone users like you.
You'll earn badges based on the number of data readings you make. Bronze for 100 readings, silver for 1,000, gold for 10,000, and platinum for 100,000. Become a citizen scientist and help us improve magnetic navigation.
Download CrowdMag today at Google Play or the iTunes Store and become a citizen scientist.
Or when you get good Wi-Fi to go and download this and help contribute. And that's going to be something that can feed some data back and be valuable to this resource and kind of give you a little bit of firsthand exposure to being on the contributing end of one of these citizen science projects. If you're on the design end of this and want to join us next year in Bremen, virtually or in our technical session, we would be very happy to have you submit your abstracts this spring and attend our session that will be session B 1.6 next year in Bremen. So thank you all for your time. Feel free to come and approach our panelists, and we look forward to hearing what you all come up with and share with us next year. Thank you.